Alpine finally lifted the curtain on its 2026 project with the A526 shakedown at Silverstone, and although this was only a filming day limited to 200 kilometers, what emerged was far more revealing than a simple first look at a new car. The wet track immediately exposed how Alpine's new platform behaves in low-grip conditions, and leaked footage suggested the car was running conservatively in ride height and rear stability. Entirely logical for a systems check rather than a performance run, but the most striking detail was the sound. For the first time in its modern history, an Alpine Formula One car was running a Mercedes 5.6 turbo hybrid, marking the biggest technical shift the Enstone team has made in over a decade. Gasly completed the entire session alone, which points to Alpine prioritizing consistent driver feedback over split data collection. Visually, the car ran a basic livery almost identical to 2025, but details like the front pull rod suspension layout and the shape of the side pods offered early clues about the aerodynamic direction of this new regulation era. All of this came just one day before Alpine's official launch in Barcelona, and that timing feels deliberate, a final validation run before presenting the project to the world. But there's another layer to this story. The Mercedes power unit Alpine is now using has already become controversial, with rivals questioning whether a regulatory loophole could give it an early advantage. If that proves true, Alpine may be standing on a far stronger foundation than the wet Silverstone footage initially suggests. So is this shakedown simply a routine systems check, or the first signal of where Alpine could really stand in the Mercedes era? And if you want the full breakdown, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. What Alpine actually did at Silverstone was technically modest but strategically significant. The team used its permitted filming day mileage, capped at 200 kilometers, to give the A526 its first on-track running in extremely wet conditions. Pierre Gasly handled the entire session, and Alpine made it clear this was about validating core systems rather than chasing performance metrics. The emphasis was on reliability checks, calibration of sensors, integration of the new power unit, and basic drivability. The kind of work that rarely looks dramatic on camera, but is essential to any successful new car program. The rain shaped almost everything we saw. In footage circulating online, Gasly was cautious through high-speed sections such as Maggots and Beckett's, carefully managing traction rather than attacking corner entries. That behavior aligns with what teams expect from a first run on a new chassis, particularly when paired with a new engine installation. Alpine's approach suggested a conservative baseline setup designed to reduce risk rather than extract grip. The absence of visible instability or stoppages was itself a positive outcome, especially given how disruptive even minor system faults can be at this stage of development. One notable decision was Alpine's choice to run Gasly alone rather than splitting mileage with Franco Colapinto. That indicates a preference for consistency of feedback rather than breadth of comparison. Gasly is Alpine's established technical reference, and having one driver complete the full program allows engineers to build a clearer baseline around throttle response, braking behavior, and torque delivery from the Mercedes power unit. It also reduces the variables introduced by differing driving styles, which is especially valuable when the car itself is still being validated at a fundamental level. The most symbolically important element of the day, however, was not the handling or the lap time, but the sound. For the first time in its modern F1 history, Alpine ran a Mercedes 5.6 turbo hybrid, marking the end of its long association with Renault Power. That shift followed Renault's decision to terminate its works engine program after 2025, turning Alpine into a customer team under the new regulations. It is difficult to overstate the scale of that change. Alpine had long defined itself as a manufacturer-backed operation, and this move fundamentally alters its technical identity and strategic positioning within Formula One. That identity shift was already being framed publicly at the end of last season. Alpine Managing Director Steve Nielsen said after the Abu Dhabi finale that the priority for 2026 was to become competitive on a far more consistent basis and able to fight at the front of the midfield, adding, "We've managed that on the odd weekend this year, but too often we've been a long way off at the back. That's not where this team belongs." The A526 and the Mercedes partnership behind it is intended to be the platform for that reset. Context matters here. Alpine finished last in the 2025 Constructors' Championship with just 22 points, having halted development of its A525 early in the season to focus fully on the new rules. That decision was painful in the short term but deliberate, reflecting a strategic choice to sacrifice immediate competitiveness for long-term alignment with the 2026 regulations. The A526 therefore carries not just technical expectations, but organisational ones too. It is the product of a year-long pivot designed to reposition the team after its most difficult campaign in recent memory. Visually, the shakedown revealed little about Alpine's final intentions. The car ran in a basic livery that looked almost identical to 2025, underlining that this was not intended as a reveal. That aligns with standard practice. Teams often avoid showing sponsor placements or final colour schemes before launch events, and Alpine's official unveiling was scheduled for the following day in Barcelona, aboard a cruise ship as part of its partnership with MSC. Any conclusions drawn from the car's appearance at Silverstone would therefore be misleading. More instructive were the technical details that could not easily be hidden. The A526 appears to feature a pull rod front suspension layout, a choice that has become increasingly common as teams seek lower centre of gravity packaging and improved airflow management around the nose and front wing region. While suspension architecture alone does not determine performance, it signals Alpine's broader aerodynamic philosophy. Pull rod setups can offer cleaner airflow towards the underfloor, which remains critical under ground effect rules and will continue to matter as 2026 introduces new aerodynamic constraints and active aerosystems. The sidepod shaping also hinted at Alpine's conceptual direction. Although the wet conditions and camera angles limited what could be seen, the bodywork appeared relatively compact with pronounced undercuts and sculpted surfaces aimed at directing airflow towards the rear floor and diffuser. That aligns with wider grid trends and suggests Alpine has not pursued an extreme conceptual departure in its initial 2026 architecture. Instead, the car appears orthodox and conservative, which may reflect a desire for correlation stability and development headroom rather than high-risk innovation in the first year of a new rules cycle. However, it is important not to overinterpret these details. Teams frequently run provisional or simplified components during filming days, particularly around cooling exits and floor edges, to reduce the risk of damage. What matters more at this stage is that the car runs, behaves predictably, and allows engineers to validate their baseline assumptions. On those terms, Alpine's Silverstone outing appears to have been successful. From a systems integration perspective, this shakedown was especially important. Installing a new power unit into a bespoke chassis involves far more than simply bolting in a different engine. Cooling architecture, electrical systems, energy recovery deployment, exhaust routing, and software calibration all require bespoke solutions. Even as a customer team, Alpine had to design its car around Mercedes hardware, and any misalignment in these areas can compromise reliability or drivability long before performance becomes relevant. The absence of visible issues during the run suggests that Alpine's integration work has reached at least a functional baseline. Whether that gamble pays off will depend on far more than the power unit alone. The A526 must deliver aerodynamic efficiency, mechanical balance, development potential, and operational consistency, areas where Alpine has struggled in recent seasons. The shakedown offered only the faintest hints in these directions, but its broader significance lies in what it represents. A clean break from Alpine's recent past, and the first concrete step in a new technical and strategic direction. As Nielsen said after the 2025 season, "We need to be fighting at the top end of the midfield for points every weekend." That ambition, modest on the surface, reflects how far Alpine believes it must climb simply to restore relevance. The A526 is designed to be the vehicle for that climb, not merely a compliance car for a new rule set. The Silverstone shakedown, then, was not about proving competitiveness, but about establishing credibility, showing that Alpine can execute a complex technical transition cleanly and calmly under the pressure of a regulation reset. The real answers will come at pre-season testing in Barcelona, where fuel loads, run plans and development programs will still obscure the true competitive picture, but where comparative data will begin to emerge nonetheless. That will be the first opportunity to assess whether Alpine's conservative, methodical approach at Silverstone masks underlying performance potential or simply reflects a team prioritizing stability after years of turbulence. Which brings us back to the bigger question. Alpine has traded works identity for customer stability, aligned itself with Mercedes at the start of a new regulation cycle, and emerged from its worst season in years with a car that looks composed but unrevealing in its first public appearance. Is the A526 the foundation of a genuine midfield revival, or just another transitional step for a team still searching for direction? Let me know what you think in the comments.